to personal work. And so we're talking about it in various aspects, and so it's important for us to be thinking about that. As you think about personal work, and I want to read this to you because you remember the Great Commission? Go and make disciples of all nations. That's Matthew 28, verse 19. And we've talked about this, what the Greek says in that. It is not go and make disciples. What does the Greek say? As you are going. We don't get that in our head. We think, well, I've got a study set up next Thursday night with somebody, and man, I'm going to do personal work this week. That's not what that Great Commission says. The Great Commission says, as you are going. And so we talked to our young people before they left on this mission trip. It's not when they get to Kansas they're going to be able to serve the Lord. When they, arrive out at the airport, and here's this group of young people. Other people are looking at them and measuring their lives, and who knows but what? As you are going. And we lose sight of the fact that we can be tools in the hands of God to be able to convert others. If I say the name Scott Shanahan, many of you will know that. Scott has spoken here, maybe 3 times, Marion? About 3 times. Missionary out in the South Pacific. And so his name is a name that, that many of us will know. He and his wife, Rebecca, just recently went over, and I was looking for the name of that island where they went to. Is it? No, that's where they. Anyway, they went over to another island, and they had, I believe it was 900 Bibles they had to just give away. Costa Rica, yes. And they were going over there to give these Bibles away. Great opportunity. Just get over there, go to the marketplace, find a place, and start distributing the Bibles. So they arrive over there, and in the Bible they've got Bible teaching, about the New Testament church and plan of salvation. And they find a little gazebo or something right outside the hotel where they're supposed to say, it's probably the worst day of weather they've ever had. And the wind was blowing, and they didn't distribute that many of the Bibles. Day 2, and today was great. First of all, the weather was much better than yesterday. It was warm, but with a nice cool breeze blowing through the gazebo, making it a very pleasant work day. We gave away several more Bibles today, as well as tracts and DVDs. In fact, we're just about out of DVDs. We have many more contacts for Bible studies and correspondence courses, but the most exciting thing happened just a few minutes ago. Now, the point I'm trying to make, as you were going. Okay, they've gotten rid of their Bibles, they're sitting in the hotel or sitting, I'll finish reading. Rebecca and I had wrapped up the Bible giveaway program for today around 5:30. We went immediately to visit a contact from our last trip named Martha. We had a great visit and arranged a Bible study for tomorrow. Please pray that will go well. We got back from the visit about 7:15 and decided to eat dinner at the hotel restaurant. Okay, personal work's over. That's our mindset. I've served the Lord today, and so now I'm sitting in the restaurant, okay? When we arrived, a very quiet but distinguished-looking Costa Rican man was sitting down waiting to take some food out. We greeted him and sat down to order our food. After we ordered, 2 other men came in and spoke to the waitress. She asked if we were still selling the Bibles. We explained that they were free and there was no selling involved. She said that the 2 men that entered after us were looking for us, and both of them wanted a Bible. I saw they were talking to the other gentleman, so I decided to grab a Bible for him too. I gave the 2 men their Bibles. One of them asked, "How much do we owe you for this?" A question we have been getting a lot. I love the reaction when we said, "Nothing, it's truly free." And we handed the other gentleman his. He was pleasantly surprised to get one. They thanked me, and I went back to my dinner. While we were eating, the other gentleman was getting ready to leave, and he came by the table to thank me. He asked how long we would be in Costa Rica. We told him we will return to Pohnpei on Thursday, the 29th. He asked if we lived in Pohnpei, which we answered in the affirmative. He said, "Oh, I also live in Pohnpei. I'm just on vacation this week. Maybe you can come and visit me in my office." You ready? I am the vice president of the nation. Isn't that amazing? Obviously, Scott said, my jaw must have hit the floor. His name is Alik Alik. I had never seen his picture before, so I did not recognize him. I apologize for not recognizing, but he didn't seem to mind. We spoke for a few more minutes, and then he again invited us to visit him in his office. I will be making a point of visiting his office the Monday after we arrive in Pohnpei. God only knows where this contact could lead. I know the soul of that vice president is no more important than the soul of Martha. But here's the whole point. Who knows what is the heart and the soul of a Martha or a vice president, Alik Alik, as you're going? And our mindset would be, we've worked real hard today and got rid of all of these Bibles, and I think, just forget about it. And all of a sudden, a door begins to open up, and I'll tell you, I love Isaiah and what Isaiah said about, "Here, my Lord, send me." That's the whole concept of personal work. And so, what I want us to do tonight, and I've lost my Bible, I must have carried it with me when I get this advertising. What I want us to do tonight is to look at the techniques used in the Bible sometimes to touch the lives of others. I think sometimes we lose sight of that. We think, well, I just can't find anybody to study with. Well, that's the wrong concept. Look in Isaiah. Look in Isaiah chapter 6. The nation of Israel was as sick as it could be. If you think America is sick, look in Isaiah chapter 1 and look just how sick this nation is. He said, look in verse 6. Somebody got verse 6? Read it out loud. Who's got it? Chuck Clark, you got it? Isaiah chapter 1. Okay, go ahead, Cornelius. Read it loud. Chuck ran in front of you. You have to back off. You get the next verse. Cornelius, read it.
From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and
putrefying
sores. They have not been closed or bound up or smoothed with ointment.
With ointment. All right. Spiritually, he says, what's this nation? This nation is sick. How sick is it? From the top of the head to the sole of the foot, there's nothing but sores that are oozing pus. That's sick. Chuck, read verse 7.
Your country is desolate, your cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers, devour your presence, and it is desolate, as overthrown by strangers.
Yeah. Look in verse 10, and I won't ask anybody to read in verse 10. Do you see how the Lord looked down and saw Israel? Look at the nation. Look at the name of that city that's used in verse 10. Now, Sodom had already been destroyed. Sodom had been burned up with the fire of God, and the Lord looks down and he said, hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. Who's he talking about? He's talking about Israel. And so it's in the midst of all of that, of a nation that was unbelievably sick, that the prophet of God was sent. Now look over in chapter 6. In chapter 6, Isaiah sees a vision of heaven. And folks, it's this vision of heaven that we have that's the basis of personal work. You have seen the glory of the Lord, haven't you? Have there not been times in your life in which you have experienced God working in your life? I mean, Freddie, how many times when they shot through the door, how many times were you hit? hit twice. Several, I don't know, 6, 7 shots went through the door or something like that. You know, I don't, you know. You think God's grace is not there? And it's not just Freddie. I mean, that's the extreme. But every one of us has had this in our lives. You lose your job, you don't know which way to turn, and all the rest. And man, it's tough. And then all of a sudden, God comes into our lives. Have you ever had that time in worship in which you felt unbelievably close to God? I remember an old brother by the name of White, and I don't know for sure why I remember. I know why I remember his name, but I remember a statement he made. He said, and I was a younger preacher at this time, and he said, Dan, sometimes in worship I lose all sense of all of the people that's around me, and it is just as though I'm sitting in heaven itself, praising God. That's what worship, can be. Think about, those who go to camp. Think about, Jeff, some of the spiritual enrichment weekends we've had together. Think about those times in our lives in which it didn't have to be a corporate thing where all of us were together, but there was just something in our lives, and there was something that was said in a prayer or something that was a part of a sermon we were just overwhelmed by the presence of God. And so Isaiah said, I saw the glory of God. In verse 6, there are these heavenly creatures, one crying to another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of His glory. And when Isaiah saw that, he says, Woe is me. I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. And we look at ourselves, and sometimes that's the way we see ourselves. And when all of a sudden he sensed where he was, one of these seraphim, one of these heavenly creatures, in this vision that he's seeing, flies to where he is. He has a live coal that he's taken from the altar that's there in heaven, and he touched my lips and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, your iniquity is taken away. And I heard a voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Time out for just a minute. Did you read that verse carefully? We talked in that sermon on Sunday night. What does this verse say? You see anything unusual in this verse? You see anything unusual in the pronouns in this verse? One of the pronoun has one letter in it, and the other pronoun has 2 letters in it. Will that help? They're capitalized, but do you see? Whom shall I send, and who will go for me? Is that what he says? There is deity. There is the Godhead spoken of in one word, 2-letter word there in the Old Testament. That's amazing. Guys, we're just reading it too quickly. Now let's get back on track. God said, here is this sick nation with, what's that word, putrefying sores. From the top of its head to the sole of its feet, there's no soundness in it. It's like Sodom. And the Lord said, who will go? And look at Isaiah's answer. Here I am, send me. That's personal work. But I'm not qualified to do it. Okay. Well, you think that's going to bother God because you're not qualified? You think God cannot use you? Think about the apostles. Where did they come from? All of them were trained in in Judaism, and all of them been all the way to schools of preaching, and Christian colleges, and all the rest. And they've got all of this great, great education, and they're really qualified to be apostles. What were they? What's their occupation? Oh, there's Paul. He is a tent maker. What about some of the rest? A tax collector. How do people regard the tax collector? The IRS will be beside your bed if you owe more than $20,000. They'll come into your bedroom and pull the bed. You saw the commercial, didn't you? Yeah, there's the guy you want to knock on your door, right? Who else? Fishermen. And those fishermen were described in the book of Acts as ignorant and unlearned. That sounds like the elite would sort of look down on them. Isn't that right? In fact, they said of Jesus, how do you have these things? You having never learned. What rabbinical school, Jesus, did you ever go to? Any other occupations of any of the rest of them? The only one I know is Simon. Yeah, Pharisees. How about that? Is that enough? Religious Pharisees. Simon the Zealot, Zelotes. You know what the Zealots did? Yeah, Luke the physician, not an apostle, but yeah, the Zealots. There were some individuals who were so zealous for the overthrow of Rome that they were, some of them at least, the henchmen. Josephus writes about some of them, doesn't describe them as the Zealots, but describes them as individuals who were there in the temple, in the very assembly, and they had hidden under their robes daggers. And at the command, they all pulled their daggers out and tried to attack the Roman government, the Roman soldiers that were there. Okay, let's get this hitman. Here am I, Lord, send me. We can spend the whole time here, but I want to. Verse 11. I said, Lord, how long? How long you want to do this? Well, look back in verse 9. Go tell this people, keep on hearing, but you won't understand. Keep on seeing, but you will not perceive. The heart of this people is dull. Their ears are heavy. Shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their heart. Well, Lord, they're not going to listen to me. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing that we decide because nobody's going to listen to us, that relieves us of our responsibility? And so the Lord said, by the way, Isaiah, they're sick. They're not going to listen to you. And so Isaiah said, well, Lord, how long you want me to do this? And look at verse 11. Until the cities are laid waste and without inhabitants, the houses are without a man, the land is utterly desolate. The Lord has moved himself far away. Now, the commitment that we have to the Lord is not to be measured by whether folks listen to us or not. Paul said, the Lord sent me not to... The Lord sent me not to baptize. Oh, but He did. He baptized people. The Great Commission does not say, go baptize every creature. Isn't that amazing? And yet, in our mind, isn't that it? We decide ahead of time. We decide ahead of time, nobody's going to respond to this. You know, why she's sitting right over here, Joe. Why do I, in our own minds, we think, they won't listen to me. And so, therefore, I don't have any responsibility to talk to them about the Lord. Well, where'd you get that idea? It comes from this idea that I have the right to decide whether that person is going to respond to the gospel, and if they're not interested, I don't have to say anything to anybody. The Great Commission does not say, go baptize everybody. And I wish we could get that in our head. I wish we could get that in our heads. And as you think about personal work, and as you think about, we're not talking about the person next to you. We're not talking about that person's work. When we talk about personal work, we're talking about every single one of us in here. Rick, do you know anybody I don't know? Probably 70% of the people in your life I don't know. Isn't that amazing? Well, who's got the responsibility for those 70%? That's the mindset. Our world is, we think about, well, there's 6 billion people in the world, and man, I can't preach to 6 billion, so I won't even preach to one. But every one of us lives in a world. Do you ever think of the work that you do and the folks you know over in Palm Beach? You may know more people in Palm Beach than anybody in this auditorium tonight. Jeff, you know more people in Indiantown than anybody does. Isn't that amazing? And Mike, you know more people that need dog food than anybody here. And Kip, you know more about people's plumbing and sprinkler system than anybody in here tonight. And you think about yourself. Amy, I'm not sure what part of Publix you work in now. You still doing flowers and everything? Yeah. You see, there's Amy's world. And so the Lord says, hey guys, got something you need to do. You get inside that world and do what you can. And what I'm trying to say is, why are we so afraid to say anything to anybody? Are we afraid? I mean, where does this fear come? The fear of rejection? Fear of failure? What's the surest way to be a failure in reference to personal work? So we're not afraid to fail. And, we feel rather comfortable failing in that respect, but as long as until we start thinking about my personal obligation, I don't fear of failure. Yeah, maybe. Rejection. Yes. I wish I knew. Look in 2 Timothy chapter 1. Can I show you somebody that was afraid? Look in verse 6. 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 6. Paul, writing to young Timothy, says, I remind you to stir up the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. Now, put that in the first century world where miraculous gifts were imparted by the laying on of the apostles' hands. I'm not for sure what gift or gifts Timothy had. It's rather logical for us to think about him, because he's Timothy the evangelist, to think about him having the gift of prophecy. Whatever gift he had. Here's the point. The man that was given this miraculous gift controlled whether he used that gift or not. The tongue speakers, in 1 Corinthians, when you have tongue speakers, let it be by 2 or 3 at the most, and let one interpret. But if there's no interpreter, then what? Let him keep silence. See, this idea that when the Lord zaps you to speak in tongues, you have got to do it, is not what this book says. So this book says, that if there's no interpreter, just don't use that gift that's there, because it can create chaos if there's nobody there to interpret. And then he talked a little bit later about the prophets, and said if the prophet is up prophesying and something is revealed to another prophet, let the first prophet hold his peace. Let him sit down and be quiet. For the spirit of the prophets are subject to the prophets. And so a man had a spiritual gift, but didn't have to use it. And so Paul says to Timothy, Timothy, stir up the gift of God that is in you. Sometime in the life of Paul, he laid his hands on Timothy, and he was given a miraculous power of some kind. And so Paul says, Timothy, stir up that gift. Now look at the next verse. Because God has not given us the spirit of fear. That's amazing. It apparently is an indication that Timothy was afraid to use his gift. And Paul says, Timothy, you got it. Use it. And so whatever I've got, God expects me to use it. See, we think we get into religious discussion. We're going to meet the head of the divinity school at Harvard. That he works right beside us at the desk, right, the cubicle right across from us. That guy over there, he's been to seminary, and he's going to ask me what the meaning of the second Hebrew word in the 18th verse of the second chapter of 1 Chronicle is all about. And we think, whoa, I cannot do this. The Lord will not tempt you above what you're able to do. You say to God, use me. And He will not put you sitting beside somebody who's a graduate of or head of the divinity school at Harvard. Mickey? Speak loud. Yeah.
And the other thing is, the gospel is good news. And whenever we have good news, we can't wait to share it. So to me, it's an attitude of faith. Because if we believe that God has the answer, all we have to do is share the good news. And we all love sharing good news.
Yes. I can't believe the bell just rang, okay? I mean, I was going tonight to ask you and give you an example that you have just found the greatest recipe on earth, and get some person who's animated enough to talk about, let me tell you about this great recipe I've got, and just, you know how animated we can get about sharing recipes? You know, Jeff says, not me, okay? So then I was going to talk about great football teams, okay? And I was going to talk about Tim Tebow. And that what a great, great quarterback we've got and all the rest. Can you get animated talking about Tebow? If you're a Gator fan, I mean, some of us have trouble getting animated about that. But you understand what I'm talking about? Isn't it so easy? Hey, man, I saw this movie the other night. Let me tell you about this movie we went to. Or let me tell you about this new restaurant. Let me tell you about this. Or, man, let me tell you about this new diet I'm on. Isn't that amazing? Where's the fear in relation? Where's the fear of rejection? You know, and that doesn't mean that I doubt if there's a single one of us here who does not, at least in some parts of our life, have fear about talking to the others. Afraid we'll say the wrong thing, and that may be the fear. How do I say what needs to be said? But Mickey, you're exactly right. The matter of sharing the gospel is broadcasting. You know, that's all that is involved in that.
I just say, our culture, when we get back to the cultural thing, I think what makes it difficult because you're told almost everywhere that religion and politics are two topics that you don't discuss.
Yes.
That's what we got to.
Yeah, but see now politics is not in that shape anymore, right? You know, I mean, isn't America all of a sudden we'll talk about politics. It's pretty easy nowadays to say, well, what do you think about health care? You know, what do you think about what Congress is doing? What do you think about the election? All of a sudden now we can talk. Now the only thing that we cannot talk about is religion. Isn't that amazing? What Satan has done to God's children.
Politics has done that.
Yes, yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah, Mick?
I use politics to talk about religion.
Sure.
I tell them I'm not scared.
Yeah,
Like they're scared or whatever.
right. Well, we'll talk about something, you know, the bell's going to ring in just a minute. I heard the first bell and everything. The number one prospect, the worst prospect for conversion in the first century world. Worse than Nero as far as a prospect. Saul of Tarsus. You read the book of Acts, and is it chapter 9 that says, and Saul yet breathing out threatenings against the church. The word yet is significant. He's been doing it, and he's still doing it. And he goes to the religious leaders and says, "Give me letters. I might go up to Damascus, and if I find any of these Christians up there, I'm going to I'll bind them and bring them back here." The worst prospect for conversion became the greatest asset in the church. I love Ananias' response when the Lord says, "Oh, by the way, go preach the gospel to Saul." Ananias says, "Are you kidding?" That's a loose paraphrase. But that's about where it is. That's about where it is. Let's bow together in prayer. And Jeff, how about you leading us in a closing prayer? Speak loudly.